Here on The Colour of Country Life at Flow FM, we're speaking with Dennis Voznesenski from the Rabobank organisation, and he is the agriculture analyst there. Great to be speaking with you, Dennis.
Hi there, Ricky. How you doing?
Great, thank you. Now, you've got some information about canola and where things are heading with that. We've commented a lot about canola prices on Flow. Where are things heading there?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. We released a report, the 2030 Outlook, and we look at all the things along the way that are going to happen. And while the overall outlook is positive as we move through the decade, there's some small speed bumps along the way that we got to pay attention to. So I'll start from the beginning. Next year, imagine you're a farmer literally anywhere in the world. You see these incredible prices. You want to plant as much as you possibly can. So next year, we might see a bit of a resupply and prices decline. But as we move further into the future, there's going to be these really large fundamental shifts driven by government policies, which are going to increase demand. So let's take the first kind of fundamental pivot in the future. That's going to be in 2024, 25. That's going to be in Canada. So Canada and the US, they're trying to reduce emissions, and they're doing that by increasing the amount of biofuels they're going to have. So in cars, they're going to mix the fossil fuels they have with biofuels to reduce emissions. And one of the best crops to do that with is canola. It's been designated as one of the lowest carbon emitting crops. Then if we move a couple of years further, we go to the European Union, which is the biggest consumer of canola and our biggest export destination. And what they have right now is it's not so much that they're growing the amount of biofuels they're going to be using, they're changing what they're made of. So, for example, right now, a lot of it is made from palm oil, but they've said that's a very high carbon emitting crop overall, and we're going to try use more canola. So no matter where you look, it looks like there's going to be more demand as we move into the future.
And I think I might have picked up, you might have been the one who tweeted about it as well, non-GM canola for those that are growing that seems to have a good premium on it as well.
Yeah, so I just saw today in Kwinana, I think for the first time in history, it traded at $1,000 a ton. So it's pretty incredible at the moment.
Yeah.
But if you look at spreads, I mean, whether you look at GM or non-GM, it's high demand and very short supplies around the world for both. So both are doing very well.
And so generally at the domestic market, the general canola, I guess the prices here are still holding up, or have they made a little bit of a downward movement in recent times?
No, they're doing very well. So they've been on an upward trend over the last year, actually. They've had some dips, but they're still up overall. And in Europe and Canada, they're still going strong as well. In Canada, we had really dry conditions this season, and crops fell substantially, so they produced around 20 million tons this year. It dropped, so estimates are anywhere from 14 to 16 million tons, some are even lower, so a big reduction there. And Europe, they're finally getting some better conditions, but the crop that they harvested this year was already low. They had some poor conditions going into planting, so they just couldn't get a good crop in the ground.
Yeah, and that factor you mentioned earlier about, if I could call it a pile-on into canola in terms of what people are planting, I think ABARES observed that in what people planted this year, especially in the West, but they still, I think, projected that the production level in Australia would be down a bit. Is that right? Because growing conditions weren't as good as last year, but still pretty decent?
No, so in this year, you're partly right there. Area has increased. So, for example, if you're growing barley, you're a bit uncertain about what's happening with China. There's some farmers who switched into canola. So area for canola overall increased. And yes, in South Australia, it was a bit dry, actually notably dry at the beginning of planting. So farmers didn't get as much canola on the ground as they wanted. But on a national level, it still went up. So ABARES is forecasting around 500,000 hectares more this year than there was last year. So still an increase. It probably would have been a bit more if South Australia was in a better position at planting.
Sure. Now, can we just touch base with you also on where things are at with wheat and barley prices just at the moment here in Australia?
Well, I'm going to sound like I'm just excited and happy about everything.
Oh, we are here on Flow as well. I can guarantee you across all the commodities, it all looks pretty good.
It looks great. I was just looking at Port Adelaide prices for barley and wheat, so the 2021, 22 pricing. And if you look at APW wheat, around $360 per ton. If you look at barley, around $280 per ton. That's better than what we did at the beginning of this year. That's better than what we did at the same time last year, and even better than what we did in 2017 when we had, that really record large harvest. And it's not like 5 to 10% higher. This is over 20, 30% higher than during those periods. So it's going well, and global demand is really strong for our products.
And are we, it's good to sort of talk alongside canola with this, is there going to be a bit of a supply challenge in Australia because people moved across in some cases into canola instead of wheat or barley?
In terms of a supply chain issue with, we've never tried to transport this much canola. Do you mean from that perspective?
Well, just in terms of what people have planted, what the farmers have planted, just to see across the nation there was more canola in the ground and less of wheat and barley, or are they not two transferable things?
I think it'll be fine overall in terms of getting the crop out of Australia. The majority of demand for our product is overseas as opposed to the domestic market. Like during the drought, the domestic market did have an influence on pricing, but since we have such a large crop and for a second year in a row, it's going to be global forces that are impacting prices here. So some harvest pressure is not going to be any different to any other year, but prices globally are going to be the main drivers of what's happening here in Australia.
Yeah, I think it's all sort of interconnected overseas with corn and the like, isn't it? It's just that general feed demand across the world.
Yeah, so in China, we have really strong feed demand. In the U.S., which is one of the major exporters, their stocks are at 7-year lows. So yeah, you got the combination of high demand and not enough supply. It might change next year. So say if we get into next year and growing conditions in South America and in North America go great for where they grow corn, then we might be in a position where, Southeast Asia or China's going to go, oh, well, not China, we don't export there anyway, but Southeast Asia and other buyers might go, okay, I'll just buy a bunch of corn. It's going to be cheaper, or you have to lower the price of your barley. That's kind of the risk I see. If conditions improve next year around the world and there's a lot of corn, we might struggle to find buyers for our barley unless we really lower the price.
Yeah.
It looks okay.
And we've talked a fair bit here on Flow about, even with the Trade Minister Dan Tehan, about barley and the China blockade and the tariffs that have been imposed. What you're expecting there on the markets, we've managed to find new homes for that pretty well?
Yeah, so it's in large part going to Southeast Asia and Saudi Arabia. It's commonly asked, will we be able to mend relations with China and send barley back there? I think it's anyone's guess at the moment, but based on what's happening, and we saw the recent deal about the submarines, and they weren't happy about that. It doesn't look like that's going to improve, so we're going to have to keep sending our barley to other markets. So again, Southeast Asia, Saudi Arabia, those types of places.
Yeah, I guess in the end, China will buy from someone else, and the someone else, then they're not selling it to someone else, and then we end up filling that hole anyway.
Yeah, so my colleague said it well. It's a moving of the deck chairs in a way.
Yeah. The demand and the number of people in the world that need feeding still out there.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like you end up, I can't remember what crop it was, but because of the trade tensions, we were sending it, to Europe, and someone from Europe was sending it to China, and the ships would literally cross each other. So there'd just be all this waste in terms of the freight costs just because of the political tensions, and we can't send it direct.
Yes, thankfully you can't easily identify whether the stuff was grown in Australia. If it still finds its way to China and we get paid well for it, do we really care?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Dennis Voznesenski from Rabobank, great to be chatting with you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Rick.